we appreciate you calling in tonight to Northeast Texas. What's your reaction and your observation on this dramatic increase in high school shootings, and in this particular case in Florida, this very disturbed young 19-year-old who went on this rampage, which killed 17 and wounded 14? What do you think it says about the current state of our society and about what's going on?
A lot of anger. A lot of anger, and certainly in that young man, and throughout society, I think. What I think is going on is child abuse. It's mental health issues.
Yeah. And I think there's ample evidence for that. They've talked about how this young man, this Nicholas Cruz, had a dark personality. At least one teacher said he had been flagged as a potential threat. And, he had left indications on, he posted on YouTube after a video about the sniper at the University of Texas, Charles Whitman. He had watched a video about that clock tower sniper down in Austin and left a comment, "I'm going to do that. I'm going to be that guy." And, put his name, Nicholas Cruz, and of course the FBI investigated that, and an astute alert person had even called that in some time back. And they went out and talked to him, and there was, nothing at that point done. Of course, it wasn't a concrete threat. One of the things, unfortunately, in this type of thing, unless they state a place or a time, and there's some sort of corroborating evidence that indicates that they're about to launch some kind of an attack, there's no way that you can that they can intervene. Unfortunately, something has to happen before there's intervention, and that's sad.
Yeah, that is sad. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Jim Gant, a math teacher at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, which of course was the scene of this recent shooting carnage, said that Cruz, the young man Nicholas Cruz, had been aggressive to students in the past. And, he has a history of getting into fights. He had a history of making threats. Now, after Cruz's mother died on November the 1st, so he'd had a recent catastrophic loss, the death in the family, the death of his mother back in November, he had moved in with a friend's family in northwest Broward County around Thanksgiving. And the family's lawyer said that the family was aware that Cruz had this AR-15, and they made him keep it locked in a cabinet, but that he had a key to that cabinet. So he was with a family that knew he had this gun. It'd be interesting to know more about his childhood, and maybe that'll come out as this unfolds, of course. So have you, at this point, seen, read, or heard any further details concerning his childhood and his background?
They don't really go into that. It's just not glamorous enough. But what I have found out is he was an adopted child,
mm-hmm.
and he was diagnosed with autism when he was 12. But I heard, I don't know that. That's word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
But there was red flags everywhere before he came of age.
Mm-hmm.
When something could have been done, but people don't really care. It's theater. It's entertainment.
What are some of the things that the school or the students or the teachers or the quote system itself could have done to intervene when the red flags started going up? What were some of the things that maybe could have been done?
Well, they could have removed him from society, for one thing. Put him in a mental hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So he can't harm people. They could have done that. One suggestion.
Evidently, he had spent quite a bit of time accumulating this stuff, the ammunition and the the arms that he used. Crews came to the school bolstered by a gas mask, smoke grenades, and multiple magazines of ammunition, and, of course, the semi-automatic rifle. They reported, the Broward County Public Schools reported that the school shooting began near dismissal time. Police say crews began the rampage outside the school, and then, of course, it continued in. He triggered a fire alarm in a building that normally serves freshman students, and, of course, that brought everybody out into the hall, making them easier targets, which, of course, was his entire purpose in triggering the alarm. And he roamed the school's corridors from the first floor on, opening fire on the students that were pouring out into the hallways.
Mm-hmm. He was mad. He was mad, and he wanted to take it out on anybody, primarily his peers.
Exactly. You know, the coach that he shot, for example. Yeah.
This kind of anger don't just fall out of the sky. It's caused by, I bet you $50 that his birth mother or father or both were very violent, either physically or emotionally. And he saw that and recorded it, and he played it back eventually.
Mm-hmm. The early formative years, those violent impressions that were left in his mind, seeds were planted. Yeah.
They were imprinted.
Yes. And, he wasn't dumb. He was an intelligent young man, even in his escape. He blended in with fleeing students, and he was at large for about 2 hours before being taken into custody. He went to Walmart and ordered something to drink, and then he went to a Walmart. After that, he went to McDonald's, and they actually arrested him, when an astute patrolman, of course, heard the description across the scanner and looked over at him walking down the sidewalk and thought he fit the description and just went ahead then, and it turned out, of course, to be a correct identification, and he was apprehended there, arrested there on the sidewalk.
Well, he wanted to get caught.
Uh-huh.
He wanted everybody to know who did it.
Mm-hmm. Back to the red flags.
It's kind of like the guy that the ex-convict that comes to get Matt Dillon, take revenge on Matt Dillon. He says, "I want you to know who's going to kill you." Marshall Dillon.
Yeah, there's an element of grandstanding involved in this, isn't there? There's an element of wanting to be in the limelight.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's what I think. What do you think?
Absolutely. And that gets back to the history of the different disturbing social media postings that he had put out before the shooting spree. According to the law enforcement authorities, this has been going on for some time. Broward County Mayor Beam Furr said during an interview with CNN that the shooter was getting treatment at a mental health clinic, but hadn't been back to the clinic for more than a year. So, see, there was a history that goes back there.
And
it said that the sheriff's department and investigators were dissecting the suspect's social media posts. He added, without elaborating, some of the things that have come to mind are very, very disturbing.
Yep. He said one of his posts said, "I want to kill people." Somebody jumped on him for it, and he said, "I was just playing." But you know what to say? There's no such thing as a joke.
one of the YouTube videos, it was actually an interview that I watched with a young girl. It was an audio interview that someone had done with her. And she knew the young man, Nicholas Cruz, personally, and was there at the school in one of the rooms when it was happening, and of course heard the gunfire and heard breaking glass and heard screaming and the chaos that erupted when it was taking place. Now, fortunately, no one in her room was shot. He didn't make it into her room, fortunately. Lucky for her and lucky for her classmates. But she did know him personally and had seen an altercation between him and the new boyfriend of one of his ex-girlfriends. He had gone up to the guy and had started a fight with the guy, basically, and she had witnessed this, and it had been sometime in the weeks prior, of course, to this shooting rampage that took place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a sick puppy.
This is escalating, of course, in the past 2 months. This year alone, the number of school shootings nationwide have been double what they were during this same time period last year. That doesn't bode well now, does it?
Oh, no, not really. This whole shooting thing, it's a popular fad right now. It'll go away after 10 or 20 years. Something else will take its place. But you know how fads are. Things get popular, like the twist,
mm-hmm.
and, the witch haircuts, and trends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
School shooting is it's the end thing to do right now if you want attention and you want to get back at people or whatever. They copy each other. It's a fad, and the people watching the news, for them it's entertainment. They don't care. They don't give a shit. Pardon my French.
Mm-hmm. In other words, the average.
They don't care unless it's their school. What the hell? It's not going to be my school. I think it ain't going to happen to me. It's not going to be my school.
Interestingly enough, I occasionally take a look at the local newspaper, and right here in this city, Paris, Texas, in Northeast Texas, at a high school named North Lamar, North Lamar out here north of town, they have in fact been having shooter drills, and I guess it's prompted by the past day or two. They've been going through, imaginary scenarios with the faculty and the students of what if there was a shooter. I'm sure it's in direct response to this, and I'm sure that's going on around the country now. I'm sure there'll be heightened and increased safety and security for a while at least. Now, we don't know how long these things will stay in place, of course, before everybody goes back to normal, and pretty soon, everybody becomes complacent again, which allows it to happen again, of course. When you think about this and you talk about it being a fad, this is an awfully long fad, because these school shootings have been going on more than 20 years now. I remember some of the earliest ones were going on in 94, 95, 96, 97. Columbine was 99. I mean, this almost, as if I recall correctly, this already has about a 25-year history, and it's always disturbed teenage males. There's yet to be a female perp that I'm aware of. And then there hasn't, to my knowledge, been an African-American kid that's done this. It's always a young, disturbed white male thus far in all the school shooting cases that I can remember. And you can correct me if I'm wrong about that. But off the top of my head, it seems like they're all disturbed young white males.
You're talking about mass shootings?
Yes, I'm talking about mass school shootings. Primarily the school shootings, primarily the ones perpetrated by teenagers. is what I was focusing on. And, you know, it's had a 25-year history now, and I don't know how big the list is now, but it's pretty extensive. You know, there have been a bunch of them. And by and large, as I recall, statistically at least, it's been overwhelmingly teenage disturbed white males.
Yeah. Well, you're right. It's more than a fad, but that I believe that is one element of it.
Yes, that is an element of it.
What's happened is the death of our society, the degeneration in society. People, I just had a discussion with somebody earlier online. Blaming guns. Well, yeah, guns are part of the problem, and the availability of guns, but that's not the problem. People focus on guns to avoid responsibility for what we've done to our society in the form of child abuse and child neglect and all that, irresponsible sexual behavior and all that. See, this kid, this Florida shooter was adopted, and I don't know if you know much about the Child Protective Services and that, but they only get involved with a kid. Well, first of all, if the kid is less than 2 years old, most people don't even consider them human yet.
Right.
So they're not really on the radar until they get to where they can crawl around and walk and talk and everything.
Yeah.
But a lot of the worst abuse occurs before the child can walk, before they're considered human, and it's got to be really, really bad for Child Protective Services to take a kid from their parents. And to take a kid from their parents and place him in foster care permanently for adoption, that means there's no hope for the parents to ever get their act together. You know what I mean?
And yet, even as bad and as flawed as today's current system is, if you go back 35, 40, 50 years, there was hardly any system at all in place. I mean, kids were just basically being beaten to death and killed virtually undetected. I mean, rampant physical child abuse was being undetected until a system came into place, as flawed as it is. A system finally came into place that at least begins to identify some of them and begins to attempt to rescue some of them. Of course, the damage may have already been done psychologically by the time CPS intervenes, as you point out. You know, almost certainly that is the case. But at least now there is a system in place that one time didn't even exist.
I agree. The reason it didn't exist was because there was no need for it. I mean, there was children that was abused, but the numbers weren't high enough to warrant a government system to oversee it, because families used to be intact. See, most of the child abuse is from dysfunctional families.
So basically, you're saying there's been an exponential increase in child abuse in the past 40 years.
Exactly, because of the breakdown of the family. See, divorce and separation is a traumatic event in itself.
Oh, yeah.
For the people involved. Well, see, in a trauma,